Hi, Sebastian. Thank you so much for your time and accepting the invitation for our ARDD sponsor interview. And on behalf of the ARD team, we want to say a huge thank you for you to sponsor the conference as Healthspan Capital, because the sponsors like you are the ones who make the conference possible. So thank you so much. And can you please tell me a little bit more what distinguishes Healthspan Capital from other longevity VCs?
Sure, yeah. Firstly, thanks for the invitation and happy to sponsor. ARDD, it's a little like the Super Bowl for LongBio, longevity biotech. So it has a lot of the top folks who are running companies, biotech startups within pharma, academia. So a lot of the best and the brightest are at ARDD. Um, yeah, so we've been coming for a couple of years now. And we get good deal flow. We meet potential investors, companies to invest in, stay up to date on some of the latest science. So, yeah, I often recommend that if someone is new to the long bio field, that ARDD is one of the first places that they visit.
That's so kind. Thank you so much for all the amazing words. And well, I can't not agree with all of that. And I know that on your advisory board there are some speakers of ARTD, Vera Gorbuneva, who was on last editions, and a lot of companies in your portfolio like Repair Bio are also sponsoring ARDD. So well, you're cultivating a great set of longevity enterprises. Thank you so much for that. But you're helping a lot to the long bio field. But how can ARDD help you? What kind of opportunities are you looking forward, and what would be your ideal scenario to exit? Let's say September 1st, ARDD already happened. What do you hope to feel like to have achieved?
Yeah, for sure. So, let's see, the objectives are to get up to date on any major breakthroughs in the field that are presented at the conference, learn about what the most prominent companies in the field are doing, um, and to meet investors in our fund and in our portfolio companies. So we're, to our knowledge, the most active investor in longevity biotech and regenerative medicine. We've invested in 30 companies in the last 2 years or so. So we're always keen to meet more investors and companies. And also it's fun to catch up with our friends, right? I mean, we have this sort of global community, this guild of long bio folks who we meet at all these conferences, and ARDD is certainly one of our highlights of the year.
Well, thank you. And ARDD, except for a lot of knowledge and a lot of tracks, also has amazing socials. So for anybody who is still considering attending, this is definitely one of the pluses you put on a list.
Yeah, I recall that there's an open bar every night for like 5 days straight, and I can't keep up with that. I end up going to bed pretty early and I don't really drink, but I'm just amazed at the fortitude of some of the attendees that they can keep up that pace. But yeah, it's 5 days typically, and 4 or 5 days, and yeah, it's intense, but and it overlaps with Burning Man, so it's kind of like a longevity's answer to Burning Man. So you kind of have to choose which camp you're in, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
intense in
true.
that way. So but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's a great location too. It's this beautiful building in the University of Copenhagen, and right in the center of town. So yeah, overall, it's really well organized.
Well, thank you. We are doing our best. But for anybody who is watching this video and just, clicked on the link because, wow, Healthspan Capital, I would have clicked on this link without thinking twice. So I expect a lot of people will try to approach you and they're already trying to prepare their pitches, prepare their, 1 minute diamond sentences. What would you like to hear from such person who approaches you, let's say, on a coffee break between one panel and the other?
Sure, yeah. So we, among longevity investors, are therapeutics focused and highly focused on large effect size lifespan extension. So we invest in those technologies that can add decades to life. So, opening with your degree of lifespan extension in some model organisms, ideally mice, and the mechanism of action of your drug. So, we know the hallmarks of aging or the seven deadly sins concept. The molecular drivers of aging are pretty well defined. And we want to know, the mechanism of action of your drug and the lifespan extension or rejuvenation effect. So it's one thing to extend the lifespan of old mice, but it's another thing to reset or rejuvenate the organism such that their better cognitive function or their physical function or younger on some other parameters. So a lot of investors are willing to invest in companies without lifespan data or without very high probability of extending lifespan. And we're really quite ideologically focused on lifespan extension above all else.
Okay, lifespan extension. So, do you invest in any specific stage of the companies, or are you open to everybody?
Yeah, we tend to focus early stage, so pre-seed, seed, sometimes Series A. We'll be opportunistic. And yeah, we tend to like to get involved relatively early on. So I've helped launch a handful of prominent LongBio companies over the years. And so, I've learned a thing or two about how to launch and run these biotech companies. So we hope that in addition to the money, the advice and connections and overall guidance is value adding to these companies. And that's been our experience so far.
Oh, definitely. So, would you be willing to spill the tea and tell some stories of the companies who, let's say, surprised you in a very positive way, to kind of in the mode of giving advice to people who are just getting started in this field?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. It's hard to pick favorites among our portfolio, but one that comes to mind as a founder who is relatively new to the business, but very fast learning and good at implementing advice, is Zoe Biosciences, and Scott Guys is his name. You may have come across them. They have a couple assets in the pipeline. They have a apelin receptor agonist small molecule. So BioAge, for example, raised 170 million recently from blue chip VCs
Wow.
for their apelin receptor agonist. And basically, the way that works is it causes the body to preserve muscle instead of losing it during weight loss or when you take GLP-1 drugs, causes a lot of muscle
Mm.
loss, which can
Yeah.
backfire. If you regain the fat, but you've lost a lot of muscle, it causes diabetes, basically. So anyway, if you had a drug that you could take with a GLP-1 and not lose the muscle, that would be very promising. And so BioAge did a deal with Eli Lilly, raised a lot of money, and before that deal was on the horizon, we invested in Zoe Biosciences, which also has an apelin receptor agonist that we think might be superior in some ways. And in addition to that, they have a Pi1 program. So one of the genes that is um, mutated in a certain long-lived population of Amish in America that enables them to live about a decade longer, reduced all-cause mortality, is this gene
Mm.
called Pi1 that regulates blood clotting, it regulates senescence, it regulates stem cell function. It's a very interesting geroprotective gene. And so they're drugging the Pi1 pathway as well. So that's just one of a handful, but I wanted to give them a shout out because they're early stage, have lifespan extension data and are just a really excellent company. And so, but yeah, we have 30 on our in our portfolio. You can go to our website, healthspancapital.vc, and you can see most of them up there on the website.
Definitely, and we'll link the website to Healthspan Capital and the companies you mentioned in your portfolio, so that everybody can see it and learn from amazing knowledge that you put out there. But if you were to give advice to, let's say, on some personality traits, energy, or basically for somebody who comes to ARDD as a delegate, except for being open-minded, what should be the attitude like?
Yeah, well, you should be excited, first of all, because you'll be exposed to some of the coolest science in all of biomedicine. And a lot of the most prominent figures are speaking um, and attending the event. So, yeah, just, don't be shy. Speak to strangers. You're at a conference, so people are usually happy to be approached and, asked about what they do. And yeah, I mean, we've been coming for a couple years and we've met some investors, we've met co-investors, we've met portfolio companies. So yeah, we get good deal flow, and yeah, it's exciting to see some of the sort of headline science that's being presented as well.
Well, that's wonderful, and for sure that will happen in about a month and a half. So very excited for this. And one more question that comes to my mind is that when you visit the Healthspan Capital website, the very first thing is the bold statements that you want to tackle aging. And well, my heart stands behind it because we should be bold about saying these things. But what was your personal path to aging? What made you take this decision of not beating it around the bush?
Yeah, well, I grew up, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and then I realized that the system is broken and is not really extending healthy lifespan. It's just kind of palliating symptoms, not treating the root cause of disease. And I was always interested in the science. So I continued in the lab. I worked at a bunch of different academic research institutions and um, collected a couple degrees and ultimately realized that I really like the biotech sector. It's kind of applied and practical. Basic research in academia is cool, but I'd like to see some kind of results, some patient benefit in my lifetime. And you can make a lot more money in the industry, right? Honestly. So that was quite appealing. And so yeah, after I dropped out of Oxford to co-found a company called Cambrian, which has become one of the larger aging-focused companies. I was one of the early employees at Apollo Health Ventures, which became the largest aging-focused fund in the world, and launched Samsara Therapeutics, which is the most clinically advanced autophagy company in the world here in Oxford, England, and a handful of other things. I, kind of caught the bug for biotech relatively early, and um, I think LongBio is the only thing that I'm going to do with my career. I can't really think of something more interesting. Maybe, like alternative energy sources or nuclear, new fission or fusion or something like that that could make a huge impact. But it's just hard for me to think of a topic that is so undervalued, where there's so many chips on the table. There's so much alpha, as fund managers would say. There's so much potential here. And it's so underappreciated or unknown, especially when I got in the field over a decade ago. It was super fringe, even taboo for academics to work on aging and longevity. Now it's become a little bit more fashionable, but there's still not that much capital in the field, and not many true blue long bio companies by our standard, which are lifespan extension companies. Many companies are increasingly calling themselves longevity, but they're not by our standard. Um, so yeah, it's hard for me to see an area that has so much potential positive impact that's also so neglected and misunderstood. So yeah, it just seems to be the best sort of risk return benefit ratio area that I can think of. And it's intrinsically interesting. I mean, it's been a mystery that humans have been questing for immortality or life extension for millennia. And, it's just one of the great mysteries of biology. Why do we age? And can we slow it down? And the answer is yes, we can slow it down in mice, up to 30% or so with no side effects. And so yeah, it's a very exciting new field, and it's cool to see all of the best and the brightest coming together in ARDD.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And like you said, it's not that much of a mystery aging as it used to be. And hopefully, next ARDD, hopefully the sooner the later we'll actually be able to say we can't not only slow down aging, but like significantly slow it down or perhaps even stop, who says? And you mentioned that you can see yourself in other fields than long bio, and I'm sure that the long bio field is more than happy to hear that since, well, you've tasted, as you mentioned, the best bits of it so far. So that definitely gives you a lot of experience to say what's real and what should we pursue in this field.
Yeah.
And the question is that with all this experience, if you could have a billboard in every major city in the world that would say something connected to long bio to people who, well, just ordinary passerbys, what would it say?
Yeah, this is a good one. So many things to say, but the first would be long bio will probably have a higher clinical success rate than traditional pharma. Um, and even if it's slightly better, 5% higher success rate, that's worth billions. Because something like 70% of drugs fail in clinical efficacy testing. So most drugs, they pass phase 1, relatively safe, and then they fail when it comes to testing the drug in a particular indication or disease state. And so a lot of that lack of efficacy comes from the fact that the animal models that we rely on to say which drugs to put in the clinic are not realistic or reliable. They're contrived. And so our friend Jack Scannell, a thinker who is a scientist who coined the term Eroom's law, which is the inverse productivity of Moore's law, or the inverse productivity of the pharmaceutical industry. So Moore's law is semiconductor processing power was increasing exponentially. Every 18 months or so, it would double. And we have the opposite going on in biopharma R&D productivity, where every dollar spent on pharma R&D is getting less and less efficient. And Jack and others have come up with ideas as to why. It could be cartelization of the industry. It could be it's getting too big and bloated and concentrated in a few hands, not enough new ideas, etc. And one of the reasons that he put forward is model validity, this concept that the animal model of disease we rely on is contrived or not realistic. So if you go back to the turn of the 20th century, we came up with antibiotics, changed, the human condition, added probably 2 decades of life, etc. And at the time, in the turn of the 20th century, if you said, hey, we're going to have antibiotics soon, everyone's not going to be dying from infectious bacterial disease anymore, nobody would have believed you. It was too good to be true. And we were able to develop these drugs because the animal model for infection, like you inject a mouse with some bacteria and see how many die, that's actually pretty good recapitulation of the human condition, the human state. But then there are diseases like age-related diseases where we don't have good models, like Alzheimer's or the Mouseheimer's model, where you overexpress a huge amount of amyloid beta protein in the brain, and you call that Alzheimer's, but when you put it in the clinic, it almost never works. So this is kind of a sampling of what's going on throughout the entire industry. Everybody has their favorite animal model of disease, but they're not predicting positive outcomes in humans. And so how can LongBio fix that problem of the unrealistic, contrived animal models of disease that the traditional pharma world relies on? Well, if you have a drug that extends lifespan across species that are very evolutionarily distant, yeast, worms, flies, fish, mice, etc., and it extends their lifespan, it enhances robustness, and it works in many different animal models of disease, contrived or less contrived, but it works in unrelated ones, cardiovascular, dementia, sarcopenia, whatever, kind of like rapamycin does, or some of these known geroprotectors. They extend lifespan across species. They work in many totally different models. Then those drugs have been much better validated orthogonally in many elements of biology. And therefore, they're much more likely to be safe because we give them to mice for their whole life. And not only does it not reduce their life, it extends their life. And they're much more likely to work, to be efficacious in various diseases because they're slowing the fundamental driver of these diseases, which is aging itself. So for those reasons, I think when we have tested enough of these geroprotective longevity drugs in the clinic, the success rate is going to be significantly higher. And therefore, the valuations of these companies should be much higher. And then further to that, higher success rate, but also a much larger market, because eventually if you can get a very wide label for these drugs that can be used for prophylactic prevention of aging or for super common indications like sarcopenia or excess inflammation or something, then your market is huge. It's huge. It's, practically everybody on Earth or everybody over 50 or something. So the success rate should be higher and the markets are way bigger. And that's not really being factored in to valuations in LongBio companies. And that's why it's a good time to invest, because the way that you make huge amounts of money is by knowing some truth that the rest of the world hasn't realized yet, right? If you invested in crypto early on, you invested in the internet early on, or any trend before everyone else realizes it, you can get in at relatively reasonable valuation. So that's my appeal to invest in LongBio.
Wow, okay, and that was very well said. And let me actually say it again. So the way to make a lot of money in LongBio is to know some kind of truth that the rest of the world doesn't know yet. It was very well phrased. Okay, seriously, that it definitely goes on in the notes of this video. And that was the most comprehensive overview of like the way to making it a viable LongBio company. So thank you so much for saying this, and I'm sure that many of the viewers will benefit a lot from that. I can't wait to get more of your insight at ARDD in person, which is happening very soon, a month and a half almost, or actually 2 months. So can't wait to see you there, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. See you there. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.